Hello, everyone. My name's Colin, and I'm here today with Otter. Otter's visiting us from England,
Yeah.
from London, right?
Yeah, from London.
Very cool. Yes, so you're with Caravan Coffee Roasters?
Yeah, that's right. I'm the head of coffee for Caravan. We're a roastery in like the north part of the city. Been around for about 11 years now.
Very cool. And you are originally, or I don't know, not originally, but you spent some time in Chicago, correct?
Yeah, almost a decade actually. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a roaster here for about 5 years before I moved over. So yeah, I worked for Halfwit, another local Chicago roastery.
Cool. Maybe like let's just go into it. Let's hear like what's your coffee story? What got you here?
Story. Yes. Well, the narrative is pretty typical, I think, for a lot of people in coffee. I started as a barista when I was about 21. I was in college, and I was studying anthropology in Ann Arbor, and I just needed a job, to be honest. And I found this little cafe where they were roasting their own coffee, and like one of those kind of third wave, but like early third wave places. This was like, I want to say 2006.
Yeah.
And so got a job there. It was really lucky because they were involved a lot with the kind of competition scene. I learned how to roast coffee, actually with somebody that now works here, Miro Lomelli. He was my coworker for a number of years.
That's awesome.
In Michigan. And then moved to Chicago. I've done like a variety of different coffee jobs. I've been a trainer, cafe manager. When the Wormhole, which is a cafe here in Chicago, decided to start roasting their own coffee, I was really keen to join that group. But at first I didn't really have any idea what I was doing, so I just kind of offered to like sweep the floor or like put coffee into bags. So I was just doing production work and whatever I could get my hands on. And then eventually got trained to roast on their little 12-kilo Diederik. And then I basically kind of went from there. Became the director of coffee there after a few years, and then stayed there doing a lot of coffee sourcing and roasting until I ended up moving to London about 4 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, so our time in coffee in Chicago was like, I think, because I knew some of the people from like your circles, and I remember like right after I moved here, them talking about Otter's leaving, but we never got to meet actually in Chicago.
Yeah.
Right around the same time.
A lot of things have happened, I feel like, since I left. There's been some interesting, developments in the scene here, and obviously the pandemic has had a big impact as well. But yeah, I did a master's degree when I went to London, so I was working in coffee, but actually kind of just odd jobs. It was interesting to go from being like director of coffee to basically just like pulling shots at a cafe while I was working part-time doing my master's.
What were you studying?
I did international development with a focus on coffee supply chains, actually.
Wow.
So I did my dissertation on coffee farm workers in Colombia. Which is a really interesting opportunity to study and learn about things that I probably would never have the time to delve into now. But it was also, it was a hectic year. I feel really lucky to be able to kind of have the time to just ask those questions. And then I got out of that job and was working for a coffee-focused charity, which is called Twin. They're no longer around, sadly. They lost their funding, but they mostly worked on projects with coffee and cocoa farmers around the world. So that was a really interesting opportunity as well.
Wow, this is, I didn't know any of this. So this is like all, okay, wheels are starting to turn a little. With this whole like coffee journey, what point in starting to work in cafes did it become like something that you wanted to really devote a longer term portion of your life to?
I think I was really down the rabbit hole from almost day one. I studied anthropology in my bachelor's degree, and I was always looking for an opportunity to learn more about other places, other cultures, and kind of connect the dots between places. And I feel like coffee for me had that potential from the beginning, whether it was like people working in other parts of the country. So initially it was like traveling around the US, for competitions and expos and things. And then the more I got into roasting, the more it was, traveling around to visit farms and other places that I was able to meet new people and see a different perspective. So I think the more I got into the roasting side, the more it felt like a real career for me, because I'm not the kind of person that wants to necessarily do customer service.
Yeah.
With all due respect to those that like that, I just needed a little bit more like focus on the kind of the groundwork. So yeah, but I think for the last like 10 years, really the focus for me has been how do I, make an impact in whether it's through roasting or importing or, where is that going to lead me?
Yeah, it's like for me too, it was as I got interested in what was in the cup, and then it sort of expanded into this it's a very vast world that it covers. It's so many people all over the place.
It's got this onion thing, right? You just peel it back and there's another layer.
It really does. I was explaining that to a friend visiting the other day that didn't know anything about what I did. For somebody that has no idea about coffee, it is shocking how many parts of the world it touches, how many people's lives.
Yeah.
What was your first visit to a coffee farm?
This is strange. So when I was I think it was 2014, I was pretty new at roasting for Half-Wit, and we kind of got an opportunity to travel as a host. I was hosted by the FNC, which for those that don't know is the biggest coffee growers federation in the world. It's in Colombia, and they represent about 500,000 coffee farmers there. Represent is a loose term here. But they wanted to, in 2014, there was a big push for the FNC to start understanding the specialty coffee industry more, what they were looking for, what smaller roasters wanted. And it was just like an importer that we had bought a little bit of coffee from was like, hey, I've got this opportunity. If you want to travel to Colombia in 3 days and represent micro roasters at the Colombian Coffee Expo, you can go, it's fully paid.
Oh.
So obviously I basically begged my boss at the time to be like, can I do this? And he was, generously said,
will you roast for me?
Yeah. And it was really cool. It was really bizarre because obviously being hosted by the FNC, I met the director of the FNC. I met all these people really high up in coffee in Colombia. And I was we were roasting we were getting orders of 1 or 2 bags at that point. So it felt really strange to try to speak to an industry that I was still just really fledgling in.
Yeah, they're talking about millions of bags. And for those that don't know, Colombia, the coffee, especially with the FNC, it's the culture of coffee production in that country. It's so ingrained in everywhere that I've visited there.
They also wanted answers about so where do you think this part of the industry is going? And I was just I really don't know. It's not. I didn't want to say the wrong thing, so I think I just kind of sat there with a funny look on my face.
So since then, first time was a unique experience.
I've had a few, but since then I've only really traveled through Latin America. I've gone multiple times to places like Guatemala, Colombia. I went to Brazil for the first time a couple summers ago. Started doing a lot more travel through Peru as well when I was working for the charity. We did a lot of work there. I'm really, I feel very blessed to be have been able to travel through that part of the world. The next step would be try to visit Africa.
Yes.
We have some relationships in Asia Pacific as well. But obviously all that's a little bit on hold right now.
Yes. Yeah, we're tentatively starting to maybe plan a little bit of travel, but it's important to remember that especially all the countries that are producing coffee are far from through any version of their experience with the pandemic.
Even places like the UK that are pretty far along, I think in the vaccine rollout, are still having their own sets of problems. So I think it's important to temper things with a bit of patience. It seems like people have waited a long time, but realistically I'm of the opinion that most things can be done through WhatsApp or Zoom, and that visiting is always really great for relationship building and really great for marketing and things like that, but it's not always necessary. So, yeah, I try to take, personally, I'd love to be, hanging out in a lot of these countries, but if it's not needed, then maybe it's more of a burden than it is anything
especially
else.
if it's putting people at risk in any way.
Exactly.
Yeah, so let's talk about the UK now, about Caravan.
Sure.
What is Caravan like? What kind of roasting do you do? Like,
Sure.
what's the green coffee sourcing strategy like there?
Yeah, we so Caravan started in 2010. London's coffee scene is a little bit younger than it is here in the U.S. Though it was pretty. There's a few big players early on. You've got your like Square Mile, if you've heard of them. They're pretty big. Caravan was started in the basement of a restaurant. It was these three New Zealander friends that went working in hospitality for a number of years that wanted to open their own restaurant. And for them, in New Zealand, coffee and coffee culture is really linked with food culture. There's lots of places where you get a really nice coffee with your brunch or your dinner. So they wanted to introduce that as well to the London kind of culinary scene. So they had like a little 12 kilo Probat in the basement of their first restaurant, which I don't know how that worked out. And
yeah, it sounds very hot.
It was hot, I think, and it was also a pain to get the coffee up and down the stairs. But yeah, they did that, and the coffee part took off. Like there's lots of people asking if they could buy it, and so I think they kind of fell into the roastery business just really organically. And then, moved into a space in what's a neighborhood called King's Cross, really close to this big train station there. Beautiful old Victorian building. And then, so subsequently, over the last 10 years, they've opened about 6 restaurants and have moved again into the roastery we're at now, which is in the North Islington neighborhood. It's a really big, beautiful space. We have a 70 kilo Loring. Where we roast about, pre-pandemic, about like 4 tons of coffee, 4 tons in kilograms. I'm trying to do the.
Need a couple
We're
sips more
here
coffee
with
before I
metric
can
coffee,
do that.
remember? So yeah, we're
We
gonna
can talk in
keep
kilos
in
if we want to. It's about
Yeah.
2.2 pounds per kilo.
Yeah, so it was close to 10,000 pounds per week,
Okay.
which is, for me, that was a huge jump.
That's a
from
lot
what
of
I'm
coffee.
used to. Yeah, which is great. It gave me an opportunity. It gives me an opportunity to really think more broadly about the impact that my buying has and the sourcing program in general. So, yeah, we source coffee from everywhere, but we have like 2 maiden espresso blends, a filter blend. We have about like 4 or 5 single origins at any given time. Pretty similar, I think, to you. We are like mostly a wholesale business. We have our own like cafes and restaurants, but we mostly do supply wholesale around the UK. And yeah, I think we're at the moment just, like many people coming out the other side of the pandemic, looking at what's happened and reassessing where we want to move from here. But it's been a wild ride. I started with them in December, right before December 2019. So I had about 3 months under my belt before everything hit the fan, so to speak. So
Yeah. So it's been a constant, just like version of changes and inconsistencies.
Yeah, but a good opportunity as well, because it gave me some time to actually maybe sit down and plan things out. Like, what would I like to see? Really focus on what was important for us as a company, and then also for me as a coffee buyer. And yeah, I think we're doing a really good job right now we use a lot of kind of data and hard numbers and stuff when we roast, and we're really I think one of the better companies in the UK in terms of our like cupping and kind of quality control program, which is run by his nickname is Moose. His name's Alex Wallace. He's a really amazing.
I'm seeing a common thread here. You got
There's
Otte
lots
and
of nicknames.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're doing a lot to just try to understand the relationship between roasting and flavor, and then of course understanding kind of how the sourcing side also feeds into that. So lots of looking at numbers, but in a fun way.
And so you were telling me that all the cafes had to shut down for a
Yeah.
while. Have things resumed at all in any way?
Yeah, London, for better or worse, I mean, the whole of the UK came out of all lockdown just a few days ago, actually. So,
Okay.
according to the government there, they basically just said, okay, we're like ripping the plaster off, as you would say in the UK. And I don't know, there's a lot of arguments to be made for and against doing it right now, but things have been reopened now for a couple of months. In May, they lifted the restrictions on indoor dining, which was good for a lot of reasons, and we were able to open the restaurants at almost full capacity at that point. And yeah, so our cafes, all the restaurants have a really big emphasis on coffee. They all have their own coffee bars and takeaway. But we also have a small cafe on the Strand, which is like a big street in downtown London. But we're hoping to open a cafe in the roastery, so we have a really nice space in the front of the building, which should be open by the end of the summer as well, which will be great because we can just do some really nerdy coffee stuff there.
It's always a cool experience to be able to bring the customer
As you
into
guys
that
know,
space.
yeah,
Yes,
it's
that's
pretty
us.
cool.
Yeah. All right. So, as you're like with your history prior to being in Caravan, you were working for this charity. You've been doing the research on, with the farmers in Colombia. I think the main focus of these conversations that we've been having is on ethically, purchasing coffee.
Yeah.
And it's on the idea of a pursuit of a better price for farmers, or understanding what a sustainable price is for farmers. So a couple questions that are we're just kind of going to kind of dive into here.
Sure,
so coffee quality.
Right.
As it is correlated to the price you pay. What are your thoughts on, how that is currently structured, and whether or not that's, to be more clear, how should the price that we pay for coffee be correlated to the quality?
Coffee quality. Well, I think we have to look at coffee as like one representative of a larger agricultural industry, and understand that there's not a lot of precedent set for the nuance that we have in coffee. In a lot of places, quality might be just based on like sorting levels, or some kind of intrinsic physical quality of the product. In many other types of industries, so the fruit industry, for example, you're not sitting there going, "This is an 86-point banana." So I think we're really forging a new kind of path. Maybe one best looked at in like the wine industry, but it's hard to make those comparisons because wine has some real intrinsic differences between coffee and wine. But I would say that the relationship has to be taken with a real grain of salt, because some places the cost of production for even like an 84-point coffee is very high. And some places just naturally produce really lovely coffees that, I think there isn't just a one-to-one quality to price ratio. But I think there's a lot of discovery still to do in terms of what that relationship should look like. I don't know if I have the answer there, but I certainly think we have to take more than just quality into account when we start setting prices.
And then as far as, not so much an opinion, but have you discovered anything as far as like some hard data on good prices in particular environments? Like for instance, with our work in Colombia, we work with an exporter called Azahar, and they do some really great work with evaluating like farm profitability.
Right.
So they give farmers a lot of data, and we've based our prices that we choose to pay like above the asking price based off of the data that they've found to be profitable. Do you have any relationships that you're happy with in that way? Yeah,
we work with a small importer called Raw Material. They're a social enterprise. They started in Colombia, and then they work now in a handful of origins, and they've done a decent amount of their own research, but they've also just kind of worked with price setting as a measurement of like trying to take basic cost of production and living wage ideas and then set a fixed price above that. That's a little, it's being tested a bit right now.
Mm-hmm.
That model, however, has produced a lot of they produce a lot of data, being able to show the percentage over the kind of average cost of production, the average living cost. And that is, coming out to anywhere from like 15% above to sometimes double or triple the, depending on the quality and the amount that the producer is growing. But it's not always consistent. That data can be difficult, and data can be slippery in the sense that it doesn't incorporate all of the other actors in that process as well. So you might be talking about living standards for a family of 4, living on land that they own and work, but it doesn't maybe take into account the people that work temporarily on that farm, or the other people that might work in the interim, so like the warehouse employees. And so I think the data is still, while it's great to have, it's still an incomplete picture.
It's such a good point about the people that work in the warehouses. That we really, as much work as we have put in, it still leaves a new set of questions with
Always
each
does.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's great. I've been working with the team in Raw Material Colombia. I mean, I speak with Miguel, their head of operations there, on a weekly, sometimes daily basis, just to kind of stay really closely in touch about, especially right now with what's happening on the ground, and just to understand where the prices need to move when things change, and trying to be as dynamic with our own buying as possible. And also using that data to help, explain that to people in the company that might not be as hands in. So our finance team and things, and just preparing everyone for what changes might look like. And I think, it's about having buy-in from the whole company, from everybody that's what we're trying to achieve on, in London and in the UK, and then also understanding, how changes at origin will feed into that, and vice versa. So yeah, I don't know, that's kind of a vague answer there, but.
Yeah, I mean, you made talking about coffees or the coffee crop like bananas is interesting, because I was thinking about this. It really is, in some ways it is just like any other, like bananas or pineapples, a tropical fruit that grows.
Yep.
And in some ways it is like wine, and it's sort of like this area where it's not just like either of those. But right now, for those that don't know, we're seeing this just in the last couple days. We've seen a huge increase in the global commodity level price for coffee, which is affecting our world in the specialty in a different way than I would have expected. Just because you're talking about coffee like a banana, so many of the groups that we work with are buying coffee from farmers and then processing it, and we're working with those people that are processing the coffee.
Right.
We've made efforts to get closer to the farmers, but right now what they're dealing with is the price that the commodity people are paying for the coffee is, just for today, not too far off of the price that the specialty people are paying for coffee. Yeah. Which is not a bad thing for those that are farming commodity coffee.
No, it's a great
that have
thing.
it. It's great. It's sort of what, and it's weird. It's like that's one of the
what
big
we
things
want.
we're advocating for.
Yeah, definitely.
However, for the people in the middle that are important to process and maintain the quality, it has all of a sudden made their profitability, below the cost.
Right.
So it's like a very interesting thing, to where it's almost like the farmers, many farmers are producing a product that's treated like a banana, and then we are also working with these people in the middle that are working more like winemakers.
Like wine, yeah, and I think also the frustration that you can, you can see it from both sides. The people that are farming commercial coffee, for one reason or another, aren't able to produce quality, aren't focused on producing quality, and they're then receiving a price that is close to people that often really invest very heavily in their farms, and potentially those specialty prices aren't going up at the same rate as the commercial prices. So you can see that there might be some frustration building from people that do invest heavily into the specialty side of their business. The inputs are just so much greater. We're talking about just time, an investment into this system, which is supposed to have, the output that will, increase for the coffee that they're growing, but it doesn't. I don't think that one of the problems is that you have a market that's based on scarcity and some other factors, and then the specialty market, which is ostensibly more stable, but it doesn't respond to those triggers as quickly or as, and so, I can see now this push and pull effect, which is that people might divest from specialty if they think, I can make almost as much money selling commercial grade coffee, which requires a lot less of my time and effort. And I think that's a big worry for people looking at this current situation, is that it would be discouraging to people that have been putting in the time and effort for the last few years to then just go, okay, well, I'm just not going to bother. I don't know if it will work out that way in the long run, because we're probably not going to see these prices stick around. In my opinion, I think it's going to be pretty volatile over the next few weeks, but we'll have to see.
Any ideas on how to communicate? Because for me, I'm still, each time something like this happens, I'm new enough in my coffee buying journey to where I learn something brand new about the global coffee commodities trade every time something like this happens. How do we communicate these ideas to customers in a way that makes any sense or makes them, that's compelling in a cafe setting?
I think there's certain narratives that people are exposed to more regularly that are maybe easier to understand, that I don't go into commercial market versus specialty market dynamics. That's, even for people in coffee, sometimes is really confusing. I think more of it is just the understanding of craftsmanship and craftswomanship, and the technical skill, and just how difficult it is to produce a product at the level that we are buying. Really talking about that, that value that's added through the producer, through their knowledge, how much goes into it there, and also processing and people that are working in processing facilities and warehouse facilities that are, really adding value to what people are tasting in the cup, and how much skill that involves. That's a really easy one, because people that drink nice wine usually assume that the people that created the wine weren't just happening upon it by accident. So there's already an understanding there. So I think that's usually the way that I go about it, as opposed to saying, there's a lot of other things you could say, but I like to just try to use metaphors people already understand.
Yeah, keep it focused on metaphors that exist in other specialty industries.
Yeah,
trying to just communicate mostly to those people, at least to get started.
Definitely.
So I do want to make sure that I touch on this one. Something I would have liked to know, because I've been in coffee for about 10 years too, and pretty early on I wanted to be working towards a job like what I have now.
Yeah.
What's some advice for people that are new to coffee that would like to one day be working in roasting, green coffee, quality control, those types of jobs?
I think that the most attractive thing when I'm looking to hire someone, and I can tell you my own story of how I got into things, but I think for me a lot of luck was involved. But I think for most people, the most important thing is to have passion about what you're doing, and to ask questions, and to demonstrate that you're interested in that as a career pathway. It's difficult for people in roasting and sourcing to find, you want to be able to find people that are going to do the work that it takes to educate themselves, because we're not talking about a community that has a university program, or there's not a lot of training except for on-the-job training for a lot of these jobs. So if I'm training somebody to roast, and that person has the initiative to read things, look up things, ask questions, and really take control and ownership over their own learning process and kind of development, that's great because it makes me feel confident that I can, you know, help them along, but they have like an idea of what they're looking for. So that would be my biggest thing. If you ever, you know, find a job that's opening up, or even just to like ask, be like, hey, is there like, just don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to just actually go into the roastery and say, hey, I'd love to get a job here. What can I do? Mm-hmm. I've hired people that had no roasting experience just because they you know, they love coffee. They like genuinely love coffee, which is the best, you know, starting point for anyone that wants to roast.
That's great. This next one, forgive me if I phrase this in any way, but in any way that is, you know, apart from what my intentions are. But so you're a woman. Mm-hmm. You are in a position, for what we've noticed, you know, Xavier and I, when we were putting together, trying to look for guests, mm-hmm. we wanted to have a broad spectrum of, what's the word?
Different identities.
Yeah, different identities.
Yeah,
representation. We were looking for, and there's not a wide, diverse spectrum of representation. No. There's, you know, there's a few people that aren't white men doing this, but most people that are sourcing green coffee are white men, and I'd really like to see that change. I'd like to know, you know, not asking for you to speak for everybody or every mm-hmm. situation, but what can, you know, other companies, other green buyers listen to this that I know feel the same way. Mm. Do you have any thoughts on like ways that we can reach people that we would like to, you know, bring into the fold? Yeah,
there's a couple things. I think on the roasting side, in which I think then usually segues into green buying. Mm-hmm. Roasting is often considered to be a job that's like extremely physical, and it can be one that like tends to attract people from a pretty narrow band of you know, you're getting a lot of kind of able-bodied men, mm-hmm. Typically, and one of the reasons for that, I think, is, well, one, it's about hiring practices and how we go about that. But the other thing is just making the jobs accessible for everyone. So, you know, if you're expecting people to physically, you know, lift and move 70 kilo bags of coffee around a roastery without injuring themselves, mm-hmm. or, you know,
without help.
Like without help. It's about like setting up each of your employees for success, no matter what their physical abilities would be. And I can't say that we've done it perfectly at Caravan. Mm-hmm. I think we have a long way to go, but making those jobs accessible to all body types is a good first step towards encouraging people to stay or to enter that industry. And then it's about hiring practices. It's such a small, often like friendly community of people. Everybody, you know, we all know each other, and but then, you know, this is pretty standard stuff, but you know, if you're just hiring your friends and your friends all look like you, talk like you, and you know, and you might not think that you're trying to discriminate, but you're just replicating what you're used to, what you're comfortable mm-hmm. with. So it's about actually, you know, saying, okay, I know a friend that's interested in this job, but actually maybe the better thing is to put this out there on a wider, you know, and not just onto coffee forums, not just onto these things that potentially other people are. It's going to be the same, you know, community. So it's taken me a long time to realize that might be one of the reasons that we're not getting more diversity, is just that we all hire people that we know, but we do need to like look at a little bit deeper, and you know, also be a bit more patient. You know, if somebody's like, oh, but I could hire this person tomorrow, it's like, yeah, but you know, give yourself a couple weeks, wait till the next person comes in, give yourself a bigger pool to look at.
Mm-hmm. Those are great words. I think the idea of roasting floor accessibility mm-hmm. is huge, because even though I have, you know, I recognize that for me that was maybe one of the reasons that I was given a job over somebody else at one point, mm-hmm. but I don't see it as an important task in being a good roaster. A good roaster that has nothing to do with lifting a bag of green coffee.
And it really, I think, you know, there's some importers now talking about like 35 kilo bags mm-hmm. as like trying to move away from these larger bag sizes. It's not just good for roasters; it's good for people who work in the warehouses as well. we do need to start thinking about solutions that don't involve, asking people to put themselves in harm's way, because I know I just simply refuse to, lift a green coffee sack anymore. It's just at 37 years old, there's not much. It's not a smart thing. At 25 years old, it's not a smart thing. It's just not a wise thing for people to be doing. So yeah, asking for help and encouraging your employees to ask for help, and not asking them to just muscle through.
Sure, maybe
things.
getting like a grain loader of some sort.
Exactly.
It's not that big of an investment.
Totally.
Yeah. I see that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
I have some questions about the kind of, can you tell me what is the best thing you've learned since starting this? Have you had any takeaway ideas or thoughts about how we can become better at sourcing that you'd like to share?
I think that idea of representation is equally important in the sourcing scenario. Once again, I mean, it can go as simple as to, like, when we were looking, it's like there's not very many diverse people that are doing our job, but so few of us are really putting in the right, or maybe an effective effort to communicate about these questions with people further down the supply chain.
Sure.
I think that the first one to my mind is that the answer is we shouldn't be the ones making these decisions. As far as the prices of the green coffee, it really should. I think a farmer should have a whole lot more representation in that matter.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, I think I watched a speech by an amazing person named Evermeister, and she was talking about the relationship between, how we use language when we're talking about coffee. And one of the things that really stuck to me was this idea that we're kind of elevating the position of the roaster often when we're talking about how we view ourselves, which is, we're like a relationship manager, or we're, in reality, often we're just a customer. We're a customer of a farmer. A farmer produces a product, and they sell us a product, and we buy that product. And without like a lot of definition, I'm not going to go into it too much, but I actually agree with Meister that it's hard. I would challenge people to change the way that they look at relationships, because if you don't think that person would use the same language about you, maybe you are, being a bit hyperbolic. And I'd like to just actually normalize the idea that we are a customer of a farmer or an exporter or co-op. And that gives a lot more power then to those people to set their own boundaries and prices. And I think that's one good step. And then also just the green buyer, having worked in importing as well, they do hold a great deal of power because of the way that commission and things like that are set up for importers often. So maybe it's up to the green buyer to try to have a better education for themselves about supply chain issues. And I don't know if there's ever going to be a coffee school for green buyers, but there certainly should be some prerequisites when it comes to getting those jobs. That, if you own a coffee company and you're looking for a new green buyer, what education does that person have about supply chain dynamics? And do they have opinions about ethics in the coffee supply? Those are things that you should ask before you even hire someone.
Right. And I think that actually brought up another point that was made by somebody else that we interviewed, kind of in a similar thread to like looking at ways that we can be more effective. And it was the idea that, in our position of, relatively much higher privilege in many of the countries, in our particular positions, for us to not take advantage of an opportunity to educate ourselves in some way to be more effective, whether it's, looking at this green buyer job as, is this as effective as us, can we go to school and really study something and become an actual expert in something, as opposed to,
learning on the job.
Yeah, learning on the job, parading like an expert, and really just being a customer.
Right. Yeah, there's also, you know, that's a big thing about these independent companies that, you know, we're running on tight margins often, but like making the time and budget for your employees to get education opportunities and training opportunities outside of your own company, whether that's going for green buyers, maybe it's like supporting them on they want to learn Spanish, or they want to take a course on economics, or for roasting, you know, actually having them take some roasting courses that aren't just the way that you teach them, because I feel like I teach people to roast in a certain way, but I'm not perfect at it, and some things are explained better by other people. So yeah, making that a priority and budgeting for that and giving people time to do that is huge. You can really encourage, I think, just it could only really bring better things to your company. And yeah, I think also just having a bit of humility about what you don't know. I feel like I started out my coffee career feeling like I wanted to know and tell everybody that I knew so many things, and now I really don't know much, and I feel like that's a good place to start when you have a conversation with somebody.
Can't agree more.
Yeah.
I am learning less every day. That's great. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much I'm very glad that you made it here to visit.
Me too.
Right after this, we're about to go taste a bunch of coffees from your side of the pond.
Yeah, from the UK. It's great.
Yes. And yeah, so if anybody has any questions, how can they reach out to you? It's a good way to get in touch.
You can follow me on Instagram. It's Ottermatic, like the animal matic, Ottermatic. Or you can, send me an email. It's just my given name, which is Andrea, at caravancoffeeroasters.co.uk. And also follow our company, which is Caravan Coffee Roasters, which is on Instagram and all the other little bits that we have circulating in this technological world. And yeah, I'm always up for having a chat about all things coffee.
Very good.
So thank you very much for this. This was really lovely opportunity to talk about things and taste some delicious coffee, we hope.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Likewise. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well,
Cheers.